why do we have this need as human beings to put things into categories? We like to categorize people. For instance, let's go back to Elizabeth Lambert. What do we know about her? What do we know based on what we've heard and what we've seen in these few minutes? What do we know, Lydia?
She has anger issues when she's on the field.
We know that when she's on the field, she's angry. At least she was that day, and we're assuming that that probably has happened more than once. I'm with you, okay? What else do we know about her?
She's a soccer player?
She's a soccer player, thank you. Fundamental things. We know she's a soccer player. We know she is a female. What else?
That kind of behavior is accepted by teammates and coaches.
At least to a certain extent, until she crossed whatever line it was, that behavior was accepted, right, by certain people. Now, we need to categorize people, and we have this need to categorize people simply because of what you see in the second bullet. It allows us to make inferences of others, right? We have the ability then to say, as a soccer player, she's able to do this, this, and this. As a student in a classroom, when someone says something that she doesn't like, she can't elbow them in the face. But as a soccer player, we have a certain schema that allows us to make inferences, and then we can interpret and remember information based on that context. Does that make sense to everybody? In terms of, okay, athlete did this. When we remember her behavior, we'll remember it in the context of athletics. Would it be different if she were a he? If instead of Elizabeth Lambert, she was Ed Lambert? Would the world look at it differently? Because Elizabeth Lambert got absolutely, positively ripped apart in the press. What do you think, Nick?
Well, I think they get away with a little more because they like testosterone and stuff like that. The guys are naturally aggressive.
Natural aggression in men. Boys will be boys. Okay?
Yeah, I would agree with that because girls are supposed to, like play nice and not be so rough. And like when a girl like that does that, it's like, whoa, you're not a girl. What are you doing?
Okay? It doesn't fit our schema for a female athlete as much as it would for a male athlete in some ways, which is totally unfair, but relatively accurate, maybe? Go ahead, Kayla.
I guess I kind of think that if it was like a guy, I think like as far as soccer goes, they would end up getting them back. So I don't know. It wouldn't be all on one person. It would be more the whole group of people that because they would probably get in a fight.
Okay, eventually it would end up being, with males, more of a group situation. There would have been retribution, in your opinion? Okay. More likely with males than females? Maybe so. The primacy effect. This is one we don't even have to write down the definition for because we know what it is. When it comes to forming impressions of people, what is primacy? It's on your AP exam, so we'll be all over this one. We're more likely to remember things that happen first or last. So that's why you don't get a second chance to, all together now, make a first impression. And we remember the things that happen when we first meet someone, and we're more likely to remember the things that happen in our most recent interaction with them. So when it comes to, all right, the word that's been used a lot is attribution. To what do we attribute people's behavior? And you see here that the attribution theory addresses the question of how people make their judgments, and it emphasizes the causes of behavior. Most people make an error in terms of attributing behavior to internal rather than external forces. It's called the fundamental attribution error. What we usually do is, if I make a mistake or I behave in a way that you consider to be improper, your first judgment will be that it's a personal flaw of mine, not that there's some outside force. So it's short, kind of nasty. Is it possible that that could be attributed to it being your last 2 days of school? Of course. Of course. Is that absolutely always the reason, or would it be the reason why you act a certain way for sure? No. So let's return to our film clip. Please repeat some of the things that you attributed her behavior to. I know you already did it, but do it again. What did you attribute it to? Losing? Competitiveness? What's that?
The sport itself.
The sport itself, the nature of the sport?
External stress.
External stress. Maybe she never plays that way. Maybe she failed an exam. Maybe she got into a fight with a friend. Maybe her car wouldn't start that day. Maybe she was just that angry. but we attribute her behavior to other things before we get to external stress. Because one of the things that's really important is that when we use 3 criteria to judge behavior, distinctiveness. Is that behavior distinctive? Does it stick out? Okay? Is it consistent? Does a certain person act a certain way all the time? And when it comes to consensus, does anybody know what consensus means? Consensus means general agreement. So how would that apply to attribution? Pick on me. I act a certain way. And when you attribute that behavior to some outside force, what would make you think that you would be more likely to be right? Mr. Bowen was a jerk today. You're talking to one another. Go ahead, Shelby. Other people agree with you. Lydia says, yeah, Shelby, he was. Well, this must have happened, that must have happened. Something else must have happened. And then if you all join together, you're going to attribute my behavior to whatever you agree generally is the main thing that caused the behavior. Okay? So let's review. We know what social psychology is. We've talked about impression formation, which has a lot to do with primacy. What else affects impression formation? Primacy is one thing. What else does? Stereotyping does, and self-fulfilling prophecy. Then attribution is the theory that addresses the question of how we judge the causes of behavior. Is the behavior distinct? Is it easily seen? Is the behavior consistent? And do other people around you who observe the behavior agree with your idea of what caused it? If you understand those things, then you've gone a long way toward understanding the effect that the way that we look at other people's behavior determines the way that we're going to act toward them. Any questions?